Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy. And let me tell you, that feels good to say that shit, especially in today's world. Good guy? Yep, sign me up all day, every day. And I just forgot where I was in the script. All right, let's pick it back up. Or, as the United States Secret Service called me, the original internet godfather. Now, how did I get that title? Well, you know I'm going to tell you how I got that title. 39 felonies, a place on the United States most wanted list. I escaped from prison, and I built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor of today's darknet and darknet markets. It laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. Those 39 felonies, well, they had to do with refining modern financial cybercrime as we now know it. Now, look, there's a whole story behind all that. We ain't got time for that, though, because right now it's time for the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming, when we come back. All right, and we are back on the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Are we talking about the Ukraine? Well, anytime you mention Russia these days, yes, by God, we are talking about the Ukraine as well. Not the Ukraine specifically. We're going to talk about the United States today. You see, President Biden, the other day, he put out a statement that was warning United States interests, businesses, citizens, and associated other interests of potential Russian cyber attacks, which might target them because it turns out that we are in a war with Russia. We don't want to say it, but we are. Anytime you start giving weapons and money to the other side, you are at odds with the other one. So, we're giving money to Ukrainians. We're giving weapons to Ukrainians. Whether we want to say it or not, yes, we are at war with Russia. We don't want to come out and say that, though. It's important not to say that because, as President Biden did point out, that would make it World War III. I don't think we're quite at that point yet, but by God, I think we certainly stand a good chance of getting there. So Biden put out this warning that was the statement that warned businesses and citizens about potential Russian cyber attacks, which might be targeting them because of the assistance that we are giving the Ukraine. Now, I've got a few issues. First, let me say that I did put out a short video in my position as Chief Criminal Officer for Arcos Labs. I put out a very short video which touched upon why those attacks could happen, why they could succeed, who the attackers were. It was like a 5-minute video. I wanted to come in on the Brett Johnson Show and do a longer format discussion of that because I have known a shitload of Russian and Ukrainian cyber criminals in my lifetime. I have worked side by side with these people. I am well aware of their skill levels. I'm well aware of their mindsets. I'm well aware of how the Russian government views these individuals as well. So just to clarify that, the rule when I was a cyber criminal and had these associates was that they were allowed to commit any crime they wanted to that targeted any Western country as long as they did not target the Eastern Bloc of Europe, the Russian properties, all right, the Russian interest. If they did, that was their ass. Vlad the Impaler Putin, that's a tongue twister. Vlad the Impaler Putin would round them up, send their asses to Siberia where they would never see a keyboard again. Yeah, try that one. You ain't going to steal no credit cards no more. You ain't going to watch no more ransomware attacks no more. Because you stole money, you shit where you eat. That was basically the philosophy. And some people may take exception to my choice of colorful language, but that was the Russian philosophy. Do not shit where you eat. If you do, we will take care of you. And that was the weird thing is that was the rule for both the Ukraine and for Russia proper. All right. Because I honestly, let's be honest, I knew where the Ukraine was, and there were several other people who did as well. But up until this war, did anybody really, I mean, in America, because in Europe they probably did, but in the United States, did anyone really understand where the Ukraine was? I mean, most everyone thought, it's just part of Russia. I mean, Vlad said that. Putin said that right before his ass went into the Ukraine, that, hey, we are all Russians. We are all Russians. I am coming in to save my brothers, my Russian brothers. So that's what he did. He's crazy. He's crazy, but, you can't say that. You can't say anything bad about the guy, because when you do, people notice that. You take President Biden. Yes, well, he's went off script a couple of times, hasn't he? He has. He said stuff that you're not allowed to say, and then everybody in the White House has went up in arms like their hair's on fire, like, let's fix what he said. First, he calls Putin a war criminal. Oh, that got some news. White House rushed, tried to cover that shit up. Then 3 days later, they come out and say, oh, he's a war criminal. Then yesterday, he goes off script with his speech, and he says something along the lines of, my God, we cannot allow this man to remain in power. Oh, my. So all of a sudden, President Biden is talking about regime change. I remember when they said something like that to a guy named about Saddam Hussein. We can't allow him to remain in power. We see how that shit went. And the world, when Biden said that, the world was like, what does that mean? It sounds like it means that the United States is going to remove him from power. They've been known to do that before. So the White House rushed out, and today they're still out there trying to put out that fire. But we ain't here to talk about that right now. I'm just saying that, hey, sometimes you ain't supposed to say shit. And we all know I'm the guy that says what needs to be said, regardless of consequence. So what I was saying is, Biden puts out this statement warning about potential Russian cyber attacks. I wanted to come in and talk about long format. Could those attacks happen? What might they look like? And what can be done to mitigate or to prevent them? Which are all very important discussions. Now, the interesting thing to me is that for many years, I started my life as a cyber criminal in the mid-90s. I partnered with the Ukrainians/Russians. Notice what I said there. I partnered with the Ukrainians/Russians in the late 90s, early 2000s, and made that bridge between those individuals and the United States individuals so that we could successfully commit cybercrime. Back then, while certainly there was the Ukraine and Russia, really, those individuals operated together. All right. Not only did those individuals operate together, but those individuals were under the protection. The Ukraine cyber criminals were certainly under the protection of the Ukraine. The Russian cyber criminals were under the protection of Russia, but it was also this kind of extended thing where the Ukrainian cyber criminals were also somewhat under the protection of Russia, and vice versa. So that was going on. So that this idea, now it changed over the years. Absolutely, it changed over the years. But back then, it was all kind of, this idea that Putin, when Putin comes out and he says, we are all Russians. We are all Russians. The Ukrainian are Russian. The Russian are Russian. We're all Russian. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to save my Russian brethren. When he says that, he means that. He believes that. I don't have a doubt in my mind that he believes that. Not only does he believe that, but I also think that there's a whole shitload of Russians that believe that. We in the United States, we sit here and we watch our CNN We watch our Fox News or whatever the hell we're watching or listening to, and we get a lot of misinformation. We get a lot of stories that have some sort of slant to them. All right. That typical story is, we see it almost every day about how the Russian people hate Vladimir Putin. Well, now I'm sure that there are some over there that do, but there are a whole shitload that do not. There is a whole shitload over there who love the guy, who believe everything he says, and who back him 100%. Among those who do are every single one of the cyber criminals in Russia. Every single one of them. Why? Well, because for years he has harbored them, he has sanctioned them, and he has helped them. All right? If you're a cyber criminal in Russia, you can commit whatever crime that you want to, as long as it's not on Russian soil or targeting a Russian interest. You can commit any crime you want to, and it's okay. Now, if you do target a Russian interest, if you commit a crime that's on Russian soil that targets Russian interest, that's your ass. The philosophy being, do not cheat whatever you eat. That is the philosophy, and it's a good philosophy. It's a philosophy that in Eastern Kentucky, I was taught that as a child. The Russians grew up, Russian cyber criminals they have been taught the exact same thing. They've been protected by Putin for decades. And because of that, they have a loyalty to the man. They owe him, and they know they owe him. They back him 100%. Anyone who says any different, I'm sorry, you're wrong. They back the man. If they don't back the man, and the honest truth is they choose to back the man, but even if they didn't, they wouldn't be around for long. So there is that. They'd find their asses in Siberia somewhere. That's one of the reasons you see with these Russians, they don't target anything on Russian soil or Russian interest, because they wouldn't be around for long. Their asses would be disappeared. They'd be in some mine in Siberia or 6 feet underground someplace. That's the way this thing works. So I wanted to talk about that because, the criminals that I dealt with, typically what happens is Russia's got their own hacking groups. They've got Sandworm, they've got Fancy Bear, they've got all these other groups that are out there that are nation state attackers. They're upper tier computer, you may as well call them hackers. I mean, we're talking to, I don't like using the term hacker, but these people are highly skilled individuals that know how to breach computers. They're skilled at misinformation. They're skilled at intrusion. They're skilled at social engineering. They're top of the top, best of the best. The truth of the matter is, and I'm going to piss some people off on this, the truth of the matter is that no one else on the planet has the same skill level as those Russian attackers. Period. They don't. You might try to say, oh, yeah, we in the United States. Oh, yeah, Uncle Sam, we got him. We got him. And we're still, this many years later, talking about Stuxnet. That's about as good as we could do. Meanwhile, the Russians, well, they've got SolarWinds. I've got a 130-page printout over there at SolarWinds that talks about that. That's a class action suit, this 130-page paper that I'm going through right now. But it's going to be, when all the chips are down, SolarWinds is going to be the largest cyber attack in history, the most damaging cyber attack in history. Russian state attack, nation state attack, targeting U.S. interest. So they got that. They've got NotPetya, which up until SolarWinds was the largest, most successful cyber attack in history. On paper right now, it still is. So the Russians are far more sophisticated. The Russian cyber criminals. And here's the thing. Who's going to attack us? Who's going to attack us? Well, out of the gate, you've got those Russian government hacking groups. You've got Fancy Bear, you've got Sandworm, you've got groups like that. But you've also got, because Russia is an area of high nationalism, people are very patriotic in Russia. And you take the cyber criminals that are there because Russia has protected them, harbored them, gave them support, everything else. Because Russia has done that, you've got a load of very skilled cyber criminals who will be joining in on those attacks. Now, historically, here's the interesting thing. So I've said this before. Attacks happen because of one of three motivations: status, cash, ideology. All right. So status, what can you do? Realize that some of these criminal groups are millions of members large. For example, when Shadow Crew, the site that I ran, when the group that I ran, Shadow Crew, gets shut down, we end with 4,000 members. Fast forward to 2017, Alphabet gets shut down, largest criminal network on the planet at that point in time, 240,000 members. Fast forward 2 more years to 2019, Black Market gets shut down, 1.15 million members. And those numbers continue to explode, all right? Explode through the roof. Because cybercrime these days is basically a service. You don't, as a criminal, you don't need to understand any of the dynamics of crime whatsoever. Now, we're talking about American speakers and not really the skilled players, but that's 99% of the criminals that are out there. All right, so you don't have to understand the dynamics. You don't have to understand any of the real specifics of how those crimes are committed. You can buy tutorials, you can take classes, you can buy off-the-shelf products and services that aid you in committing your crime. So that's really the way most United States cyber criminals are. All right. They typically are very good social engineers. They're not very technically proficient. The people who are proficient in the cybercrime world, well, there's a whole shitload of them that are in Russia. All right. Because remember those 3 necessities of cybercrime that I've mentioned before: gathering data, committing crime, cashing out. All 3 necessities have to work in conjunction. If they don't, the crime fails. Why try? The problem is that one individual, one criminal, can't do all 3 things. He can do 1, sometimes 2, rarely all 3. All right? Now, the reason that is like that, the reason a criminal can't, so just to break down the 3 areas: gathering data, that's the PII, that's the credit card numbers, the bank account logins, bank account details, whatever that is. It's also the tools that are used. So spoofed phone numbers, SOX 5 proxies, RDPs, maybe some upper tier tools like Eternal Blue, Eternal Romance, whatever tool is needed in conjunction with whatever information is needed goes under that first category of gathering data. So you get the data and the tools, and then you go off and you commit the crime with that, and then you need to put cash in pocket. Now, there's a reason that a single criminal, there's actually 2 reasons that a single criminal cannot do all 3 things. And those 2 reasons are: sometimes it's a skill gap. Sometimes a criminal simply doesn't know how to do those things. So, for example, I was always very good about committing the crime and laundering the money. Now, I can get the data, but I'm not really great at it. I can do it, but I'm not great at it. There are people who are much better, much more skilled, much more knowledgeable at stealing that information or building those tools, for example. Why would I waste my talents and effort on that when someone else who is better at it can do it more efficiently? All right. And then I can buy it and I'm sure it works great and everything else. So a lot of the times it's because someone doesn't know how to do it. Someone doesn't know how to do a man in the middle attack, or they don't know how to launch a phishing campaign or anything else like that. So they rely on someone else to do it for them. Same thing for building tools. There's a whole boatload of criminals who have no idea at all about how to spoof a phone number. So instead they go over to spoofcard.com or PhoneGangsta or something like that and let the service do it for them. All right. So a lot of the times they simply don't have the skills to do it themselves. Same thing for laundering money. Someone may be able to commit multitudes of credit card theft, but they really don't understand how to cash it out. Or maybe someone can do a man-in-the-middle attack. They can launch a phishing campaign, but they really don't know, once they get all the credit card details or the bank account details and logins that are there, they don't know how to commit the crime. So they just sell the data to someone who does know how to commit the crime. So a skill gap, all right? There's also the other reason someone cannot do all three things is a problem with geography. That criminal is in a geographic area where he or she, rarely she, but he or she cannot do all three aspects. For example, if you take the stimulus fraud, which ate our country alive during the pandemic, all right, especially unemployment fraud. Now, a lot of the crime that was committed was not inside of the United States. It was overseas. It was in Russia or the Ukraine or Brazil or the UK or something like that. Now, there's a problem with that. Now, all the data's out there. There was no security in place on any of these stimulus programs, so it was very easy to commit the crime. The deposit instruments, you could use fintech services, stuff like that as well. But so you get that direct deposit sent to a prepaid card, or maybe the state is issuing their own prepaid cards to have those unemployment funds deposited to, or whatever the state was doing. Now, if the criminal who is actually filing the claim is in the Ukraine, can he pull money out of an ATM in the Ukraine? Well, he can, but it's going to raise flags from hell at the unemployment office. They're going to sit there going, what on earth are these withdrawals coming out of the Ukraine? And they're going to shut the account down. So the criminal who is filing claims from Russia or the Ukraine or Brazil or the UK, he has to have someone in the United States who's going to that ATM and pulling out cash. All right, that's how you have to do that. So sometimes there's a geographic problem that necessitates working with other individuals who can do that part of the crime. And usually that's the laundering aspect of these crimes. All right. So skill gap, geographic problem, which necessitates working with others. That's exactly what happened when I partnered with the Ukrainians and the Russians back in the early 2000s. They had all the data in the world, credit card numbers. They knew how to commit the crime. But so much fraud had happened in that Eastern Bloc that every single credit card, even for legitimate card holders, was locked. You couldn't pull cash out of it. So they had to rely on someone to pull cash out for them. Okay? So geographic problem, skill gap. Now, that being said, because of that geographic problem in Russia and in the Ukraine, they have the data. They can commit the crime, but they can't launder it out. Because of that, that really kind of necessitates these criminals being more skilled, all right? Because in the United States, top money laundering country on the planet, in the United States, it's easy to pull cash out of ATMs. Over there, you can't. So you have to develop other skills to profit. So we're talking about cyber criminals in Russia who are very skilled at running botnets, launching DDoS attacks, launching automated account takeovers, automated network takeovers, all these automated types of attacks, DDoS campaigns, everything else. So they're very skilled about doing that. They're very skilled about building ransomware or malware. They're very skilled players in that. So you're dealing with a cyber criminal who is much more skilled technically than anything that we really have in the United States. We have some skilled attackers in the United States. We certainly do. But they pale in numbers to those over in Russia. All right? So just understand that. Now, these attackers, why do they attack? Well, historically in the United States, we've seen attacks that are cash-based. Cyber criminals attack for one of three reasons: status, cash, ideology. Status, I think I've already mentioned that. You know, some of these criminal sites have millions of members. If you can do something within that community, you've got a 1 million member community. If you can do something that no one else can do in that community, you gain the respect of every single person there. Can you build ransomware? Can you deploy ransomware? Can you launch a successful business email compromise? Can you do this stuff? Can you use stolen credit card information to defraud Apple and Amazon when no one else can do that? If you can, then you gain the respect of every single person in that environment. And that respect equates to profit. All right. So that's status. Cash, easy enough. Criminals have historically hit targets in the United States or U.S. interest to steal money. All right. Now, China's a little bit different. China likes to steal IP, which at the end of the day still profits those Chinese attackers. So cash has historically been king, but there's this other reason that crime is committed, and it's ideology. All right. Do you have a different political opinion than someone else? Have you pissed someone off? If you have, do you think that you could potentially be attacked because of that? Think about that for a second. Think about just what we've seen in our country over the past couple of years. If you have a different political opinion than someone, might you be attacked? Hell yes, there's this whole thing that happened at the Capitol because of a difference in political opinion. Absolutely, it's there. Absolutely, you could, yes, you can be attacked because of that. Can you be attacked online? Just ask PayPal. PayPal a few years ago stopped taking donations for WikiLeaks. It pissed people off. Some of those people it pissed off launched DDoS attacks against PayPal, cost them over $30 million in damages. So yes, you can be attacked because of ideology. Now, it's important to understand why you're being attacked, because if you're being attacked for cash, all right, most cash-based or cash-motivated attacks are lowest hanging fruit. You've got a criminal that's looking for the easiest target that profits him the most money, okay? So if you've got a target that you've got two targets and they both have the exact same cash opportunity for a criminal, the target which is easily attacked is the one that the criminal goes for. The target that has more security, probably not. He's not going to waste his time over here when this one's a much easier target that's going to profit as much or more money for him. So it's really the lowest hanging fruit principle. All right. So if you have good security in place, it's kind of that, it's that good neighbor policy. It's that, hey, we got our security in place. The idea is to send the attackers down the road to one of our other neighbors. Yeah, let him deal with them. Leave us alone. We're just a little bit higher up that tree. So that's what happens. And it's usually not an attacker. You're usually not going to have an attacker that's motivated by cash, that's going after specific targets when there are easier targets elsewhere. Okay? That's this whole idea that if you can make an attack where it's not monetarily feasible for a criminal to do, that he won't hit you. All right. However, there are two motivations where that does not work. Those two motivations are status and ideology. Status, you're looking to impress your criminal community. You're looking to do something that no one else can do. If you can use stolen credit card details and defraud Apple or Amazon, which both of those have great, outstanding security against credit card theft. If you can do that, then you gain the respect of everyone there. All right. So good security is a plus if you're attacking because of status, if you're trying to impress people. All right. Because of that, these attackers typically don't go away. They typically are there and they like that hard security because they're able to show off their chops. All right. Ideology is even worse. You're dealing with someone that has a different belief system than you. That attacker does not go away. That attacker, see, in the United States, we've seen attacks that are cash motivated. The attacker attacks a company or a person, and the idea is to steal money, to profit. All right. So that defines a specific type of target. First, the type of target that can pay up. All right. That has money. But it also is a target that the attacker wants to stay in business. All right. The attacker wants that company, that retailer, that infrastructure, whatever that is, he wants them to stay alive so that they can pay him the ransom, the business email compromise funds, the stolen merchandise through credit card fraud, whatever that is. All right. He wants that business to stay alive because if he causes enough damage and causes that business to shut down, he's not going to profit at the end of the day. So it defines a specific type of target when you're looking at cash. When you're committing crime based on ideology, the targets are different. All right. It doesn't matter anymore if the criminal, if the victim can pay the criminal. It doesn't matter because the criminal is not looking to make money. The criminal is looking to cause damage. He's looking to destroy things. You've got a whole slew of different types of targets all of a sudden. All right. And you've got attacks that are launched that don't care if a company stays in business. They want the company out of business. More damage. All right. Now that I say that because these cyber criminals, and I've not even got to the nation state shit yet, but these cyber criminals are going to be committing crimes based on ideology. You can bet on that. Joe Biden is absolutely right when he says it's coming. It's coming. All right. I don't even like Joe Biden. And it's not that I hate the Democrats. I don't like Trump either. All right. I would have voted for Biden if I'm a felon, so I don't vote. That way I can bitch about everybody. But I would have voted for Biden if I could. I would have regretted the vote right now because I'm paying X amount of dollars for gasoline. He's saying stupid shit on political stages. I'm wondering why the hell we've got over 320 million Americans and we can't find one decent U.S. president. And I don't mean to get political, but by God, things are getting kind of rough. We've got all these Americans. We can't find one decent person to be president in this country and to lead us. Meanwhile, you got Vladimir John Wayne Zelensky over there. That's one hell of a leader in the Ukraine. Got a lot of respect for that guy. I wish we had a leader like that here, but we don't. We don't get, there's a lot of truth to that saying. My dad once told me that we don't get the president we want. We get the president we deserve. So I don't know what the hell we've done to deserve the past presidents that we've had and this one, but by God, we've done something to deserve it. So that being said, let's move right along. Before we turn the Brett Johnson show into some sort of political something. So the attackers are instead of cash-based, you're looking at them launching attacks that are ideologically motivated. That before those attacks were lowest hanging fruit, now it doesn't matter. Now you're looking at attacks that are looking to destroy and disrupt, looking to cause harm and damage and make people's lives far worse. All right. Now, that's just on the cyber criminal side. We've got the exact same thing going on the nation state side. Groups like Fancy Bear, groups like NotPetya. What might those attacks look like? Well, to understand that, we can look at two different types of attacks. We can look at SolarWinds and we can look at NotPetya. Now, SolarWinds will be the largest, most damaging attack in history when all the chips are counted. Right now, that's still not being counted. And funny thing is that as damaging as that attack is, there hasn't been a whole lot of chatter about that. People have kind of, not wanted to discuss that. And the reason why is because that freaking attack is so bad. It is so bad that it's something that I don't know if this country can ever recover from it. All right. Now we may as well talk about that for a second. So what happened is Fancy Bear Group, Russian nation state hacking group, one of the top in the world. I personally think Sandworm is better and more sophisticated, but it's kind of up in the air. Certainly Fancy Bear, right the hell there. They basically they gain access to SolarWinds, which provided the Russian government a snapshot of basically every company that might be of interest to the Russian government. Provided the IPs, provided intellectual property, provided source code for things like the entire Microsoft 365 Windows. It provided source codes for that, gave snapshots of the way companies operate, of emails of the companies, of every single thing that you could possibly imagine is what it did. All right. And they had access to this for years. 4 years. Meanwhile, the people at SolarWinds knew of the problems. They didn't know they had been breached, but they knew they had some bad difficulties, and they lied about the vulnerabilities to everyone, including investors, for years. I've got a 130-page class action lawsuit over there I've been reading through that details how SolarWinds lied to everyone for years about the problems and vulnerabilities over there. All right. Meanwhile, Russia is sitting there getting snapshots of every single thing that was around so they could get all of that. All right. Get information of all these companies. It is a nightmare. I can't think of anything that comes close to the damage that SolarWinds has caused. Now, no one's really chattering about that, and I think the reason why is because it's really hard to put into words how damaging that attack is. All right, and this is an attack that potentially you cannot recover from. Nation state attack, Russia launching it. That will be the largest, most successful attack in history when all the chips are counted. Right now, and we're talking about what these attacks could look like targeting U.S. interests. Right now, the largest, most damaging attack in history is called NotPetya. That is also a nation-state attack. It's the Russian government targeting Ukraine. It's Sandworm that did that. Now, Sandworm, you ask my opinion, Sandworm is the top of the top. It is the most sophisticated hacking group on the planet. None better. All right. Let's pause there a second. Why do attacks happen? How do criminals attack you? All right. A lot of press, a lot of the media out there, they like to talk about these things called zero-day attacks, these unknown vulnerabilities that are only known to the attacker. All right. They say, oh, yeah, we got to watch out. These zero-day attacks, all these attackers, all these hackers out there, they've got 0 days that no one knows about but them. Scary language, scary ideas. The truth of the matter is 90% of every single attack, slow it down, pay attention to what I'm saying, 90% of every single attack uses known exploits. Okay, 90%. I don't care if that's an attack against an individual, an attack against a company, an attack against an organization or a government. 90% of every single attack uses known exploits. SolarWinds. Fancy Bear gained entry because of known exploits. As a matter of fact, one of the passwords that was out there that they used to gain entry to was SolarWinds 123. That helped them gain entry. If you look at Colonial Pipeline, remember the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack where gasoline shot up to $7 a gallon in Virginia. The attackers got access to Colonial Pipeline by using a password that was listed on the dark web. Actually, I think it was listed on Pastebin. All right. So they simply looked up a password to the VPN that Colonial Pipeline was using. Password worked. They gained access to the system, deployed ransomware, went like that. NotPetya, the largest, most successful cyber attack in history until the chips are counted with SolarWinds. NotPetya uses a variety of known exploits to cause over $50 billion worth of damage. Just to walk you through it. So what happens is the Russian Sandworm group, top hacking group on the planet, most sophisticated hacking group on the planet, they basically take over the QuickBooks of the Ukraine. They take over its update server, faking a Microsoft certificate, a known exploit. They put out what looks like an update, not an update, and it looks like it's ransomware, but it's not even ransomware. It looks like ransomware, but it's not ransomware. It's a program which is designed to destroy hard drives, It's an ideological attack. It's an attack that's not looking to make money. It's looking to cause damage. It's looking to destroy, to disrupt, a lot like what we're going to see in the United States. So they launched this attack that looks like it's an update, looks like it's ransomware, but it's not. It's an attack that's meant to destroy hard drives. It uses Eternal Blue and Eternal Romance, both known exploits which had patches that were put out about a year and a half prior to this attack. Very few people had installed the patches. Known exploits, again, we talk about patch as soon as you can. Very few people do that. Attackers know that very few people apply those patches, so they tend to use that. So if you think about it, an update is a broadcast to every single criminal on the planet telling them which door to knock on, because a lot of people, a lot of companies don't apply those updates, don't apply those patches when they're announced. They wait, they sit on them. Meanwhile, that broadcast to those criminals says, hey, this vulnerability is out there, and criminals start to use that vulnerability immediately. That's exactly what happened with Equifax. Apache announces an update. Equifax did not put out the update. Did not apply the update, did not apply the patch. Within 24 hours of Apache broadcasting that update to all those criminals, Equifax is hit. All right. So Eternal Blue, Eternal Romance with NotPetya used, had been patched. No one had really applied the patches. Very few people had applied the patches. Again, known vulnerabilities. NotPetya uses Mimikatz. Now, Mimikatz harvests credentials out of RAM. This guy named Benjamin Delpy created this thing that can harvest login credentials out of RAM. All right, you log out, it's your login credentials are still in RAM. So NotPetya uses that as well. Another known exploit. NotPetya looks for outward-facing SMBs, so remote access. Now, we have been preaching, well, the good guys have been preaching about outward-facing SMBs for years. 4 years. You got to close that shit off is what's been said. Been preaching it. But, you would think that, because you've been screamed about it for years, that people have paid attention, that they've closed down those ports. No. Turns out that millions of computers had those ports open. So many so that as NotPetya looks for those outward-facing ports, the attack leaves Ukrainian boundaries. It hits Maersk. It hits pharmaceutical companies that have still not been mentioned today, causes $50 billion worth of damage. The most successful, most damaging cyber attack in history. No zero-day attacks, no zero-day vulnerabilities there. All known vulnerabilities chained together to cause this damage. If you're wondering what an attack targeting U.S. interest is going to look like, it's going to look a lot like that. It's going to look a lot like that. It's going to be known vulnerabilities, because the truth of the matter is, zero-day attacks, in my 20-year history as a cyber criminal, I had access to 2 0 days, only one of which resulted in profit. If you're a cyber criminal, if you're an attacker, nation state or credit card thief, and you're waiting on a 0-day attack to profit, you are going to starve to death. The profit, the success, comes from 90% of those attacks are known vulnerabilities. It's not the shit we don't know about. It's the stuff we do know about that we've been told about for years that causes the problems. Take individuals, for example. I have been on the legal side of the fence for, 5 years, maybe a little bit more than 5 years now, and I have preached about credit freezes. Everyone in the house needs to freeze their credit, including kids, because children are the number one victims of identity theft. 25%, 1 in 4 kids will be a victim of ID theft. A credit freeze is smart. Not only is it smart, it's free. It's one of the cornerstones of proper individual security. Credit freezes became free in 2018, 4 years ago. Free. Don't got to pay anything for them. Don't got to pay a thing. It's a great security. Great. Free. 2018. Today, the population, 12% of the U.S. population has a credit freeze in place. It's not the stuff we don't know about. It's the stuff we do know about that we've been told about for years that we're not doing anything about that causes the problem. You want to know what an attack is going to look like? That is what an attack is going to look like, because we've got a whole lot of targets in the United States that have not practiced proper cybersecurity. And here's the thing. Proper cybersecurity is not sexy. It's not romantic. It's not that new product that's out there that said, oh, we've got you. Oh, yeah, we got you. We can take care of you. Only thing you need is our product or service. That is what's called cybersecurity pillow talk. Oh, yeah, I love you a long time. No, the truth of the matter is that proper cybersecurity is not sexy. It's simply the nuts and bolts, getting down to basics and doing what you need to do. 80%, some stats, 80% of every single person on the planet uses the same password and login across multiple websites. Now, we've known about passwords for how long? Yet you look at SolarWinds, you look at Colonial Pipeline, you look at all this bullshit for all these years where the access has come because of a password. Individuals as well, because of a password. That's why credential stuffing is so damn successful and so damn profiting and so damn damaging. 80% of the population uses the same password. It's this thing that we've been told about, we've not done anything about. You want to know how attacks are going to look like? What they're going to look like? That's what they're going to look like. 41% of every single router on the planet has the default password. Man, any idea what you can do with a router with a default password? Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, but 41%. That's home, that's business, 41%. And that's just the router. We've not even talked about IoT devices, of which there are billions, if not a couple of trillion by now. Default passwords, that's another issue. 56% of companies have experienced a breach due to third-party access. So you take a company like Marriott. The reason that breach happened is not because of Marriott, it's because of a third-party company which accessed the Marriott system that was connected to it. So 56% of companies have experienced a breach due to third parties. Most companies have no idea how many third parties are accessing their system. Of those third parties accessing their system, none of those third parties have been vetted. Your system is only as strong as the weakest device which accesses it. It's not unknown vulnerabilities. It's not zero-day attacks. It's the stuff we know we should be doing, that we've been told we need to do for years, that we've not done, that's creating this threat landscape. Individuals as well. You know, we don't monitor our accounts. We don't place alerts on those accounts. We don't do these things. We don't change our passwords. We don't put credit freezes in place. Those are the issues. So if you're wanting to know what an attack looks like, that's what it looks like. Is it going to target individuals? Not specifically, all right? I would expect an attack that targets, and we saw that a couple weeks ago, an attack that targets all these routers. All right, so you take a route, if 41% of every single router has a default password, how difficult would it be to launch a mass attack that destroys the routers or looks to gain access to all these systems at once? Probably not that difficult, all right? So that would be an avenue. I would look for breaches that steal people's information. I would look for that, and that would affect you. I would look for hits on the financial system. That would certainly hurt individuals. I would look for hits on infrastructure. So shutting down power grids, shutting down water companies, things like that. I would look for hits like that. Again, these are attacks that are not looking for profit. They're looking to cause damage. So I would look for attacks like that. I would look for any number of things like that. Anything that disrupts our supply chain. Think about that. Our supply chain gets disrupted, and I mean, I go to the store. I went to the store to buy chuck roast because I wanted some pot roast. I remember last year, I gave $4.40 at Sam's Club. I gave $4.48 a pound for chuck roast. It was $9.98. Now, what happens? And Biden said the other day, as if that's not bad enough, Biden says the other day that we're going to see, quote unquote, real shortages on food. By God, if that's not a real shortage, what does that price look like? And that's before all these gas prices started to go up. So we're going to see some real problems there. And if the Russian attacks, if these cybercrime attacks can disrupt things even more, what does that mean? That means a lot of problems. What happens if Russian attackers are able to shut down people's payments? You know, they're able to disrupt, say, senior citizen Social Security payments. They're able to perhaps disrupt some bank systems out there. And banks are highly sophisticated at protecting things, but could it happen? Maybe. All right. So you've got to pay attention to stuff like this. So could those attacks happen? Absolutely, they could happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, because now you've got a country that is openly ideologically opposed to each other. You've got the United States and Russia that are openly ideologically opposed, and those attacks are definitely going to happen. Definitely. There's not a doubt in my mind that we're going to see that. What will they look like? They'll look a lot like SolarWinds, NotPetya. All right. They're going to be these attacks that are not cash-based. And because of that, the targets are going to be different. That doesn't mean that merchants and retailers won't still be hit or that hospitals won't still be hit. But the type of attack is not the type of attack that's going to say, pay us money. It's going to be the type of attack that's going to destroy systems, that's going to lock patients out of whatever type of units they might be on, ventilators or anything else like that. It's going to be those types of attacks that cause fear and that cause damage. It's also going to be misinformation attacks. We've already seen that. In the Ukraine, we saw a deep fake video released of Vladimir John Wayne Zelensky that said he was surrendering. And it looked real. Now, do you think some people in the Ukraine believe that? Hell yes, they believe that. That destroys a lot of morale. It sows a lot of mistrust throughout the entire Ukraine. Are you going to see stuff like that? Well, guess what? We've already seen stuff like that. During the election, we had a lot of misinformation put out by Russian interest. So yes, we have seen that, and we're going to see that continue to ramp up. Think about misinformation that targets your stock markets, targets investments, targets the monetary system, targets. Think about videos that are released. You know, we had a lot of racial strife in the United States. Think about that video of that police officer shooting an unarmed individual, or at least the video shows the individual is unarmed, but later it comes out that no, that's a deep fake video. Someone just removed the weapon from that assailant's hand, and it made it appear that that the cop shot an unarmed individual. Are we going to see that? Yes, we are going to see that. The problem is when a video like that is put out, even though later on it's fixed and reported as false, the damage is already done by that point. All right. So think about all these types of avenues that an attacker could go out and hit something with. All right. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, what can be done to prevent those attacks, to mitigate those attacks? And I've talked about what those attacks could look like, who the attackers are. It's not just nation states. It's all those cyber criminals that Vladimir Putin has harbored. He's protected. He's gave assistance to, everything else. All right, because they owe him, and they're nationalistic. They believe in the man. They support the man. Anybody who thinks they don't, let me wake you up now. wakey, eggs and bakey. This is the real world. All right. So those are the attackers. Talk about what those attacks will look like, how those attacks might happen. How can you prevent them? Well, we've already alluded to that to a degree. Doing the things that we know that we need to do. If you're an individual, put your damn credit freeze in place. Monitor accounts and place alerts. Do something about those damn passwords. Use a password manager. All right? Be aware of your environment. Have that situational awareness. If you're on Facebook and you see a news story coming through, trust and verify Where's the story coming from? Is it coming from a friend? That doesn't mean it's real. Make sure the source is a trusted source. Just because it says it's connected to CNN or Fox or whoever you get your news from, make sure it really is. Also pay attention that even though it's coming from them, pay attention to the slants, the editorial slants that are attached to those stories. All right? It's important to be objective about your environment, about the situations that are at hand. All right, be objective. Don't fall into propaganda, because there is propaganda on all sides right now. Make no mistake about that. Propaganda is on all sides. It's important to understand what that propaganda is, not to feed into it, but to try to gauge the truth and understand that there's going to be a lot of fake news out there. I used to teach this thing. The perception of truth is much more important than the truth itself. Facts no longer matter. What matters is what someone can be convinced of. The first thing that goes during a war is the truth. Facts disappear. Now it's all about someone's perception. What can we get someone to believe? How can we manipulate someone? All right. So it's important to try to verify as much as you possibly can. All right. I'm saying all right a lot, like I'm Matthew McConaughey. All right. But the perception of truth is more important than the truth itself. These attackers understand that facts don't matter. What matters is what someone can be convinced of. You put out a deep fake video of Vladimir Zelensky saying he's surrendered. You've convinced some people that he's surrendered at that point. So for individuals, that's what you do. For corporations, cybersecurity, proper cybersecurity is not sexy. It's not romantic. It's not these things you see on TV and in the movies and everything where you're some super spy. You're not. It's the nuts and bolts. It's getting down and doing the things that people have known about for years that have not been addressed. And a lot of companies out there, they adopt this idea where they don't worry about proper cybersecurity until they're attacked. Their budgets are going toward other things. That is a wrong thing to do. Now, and the reason why is because these attacks are going to be ideologically motivated. This attack is not going to be an attack that is going to want your business to stay in business. It's wanting to shut down things and destroy things for good. You need to get off your ass. You need to get off your ass and do something, because this attack is different than an attack that steals money, which is historically what we've seen in the United States. I honestly don't know if there's time at all, but it needs to start now. It needs to start now, because these attacks are going to destroy a lot of things. They're going to hurt a lot of people. All right. So you do the proper thing. You look at the way these attacks are happening. I've already talked about the skill level of Russian criminals and nation state players in Russia. All right. The skill level is through the roof. They're highly sophisticated in social engineering. They're highly sophisticated in breaches. They're highly sophisticated in building the tools and malware that's out there. So are you looking at bots? Hell yes, you're looking at bots. You're looking at bots that are hitting social media. You're looking at intelligent bots that are going out and stealing, causing damage, causing DDoS attacks, everything else that's out there. You're looking at all of this that's being built not to profit, which is historically what was there, but instead that it's being deployed to damage. So you need to do something about the bots that are hitting you. You need to do something about the social engineering attacks. That misinformation is being out there. Think about bots that are being used on social media. We saw Russia doing that before. The bots are built so that they actually work with the algorithm so that all those stories go out, get all those views, convince more and more people to believe the fake news that's out there. Joseph Goebbels had this idea, and he said that the bigger the lie, the more people who will believe it. That's true, by the way. The bigger lie someone tells, the more people who will believe it. And social media makes that even more damaging than what even Goebbels could envision at that point. So it's important to understand that. We have to defend against these types of automated attacks, these automated account takeovers, the known vulnerabilities that are out there. This needs to be done now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you finally see these attacks hitting your vertical, because when these attacks do finally hit your vertical, it is too late for you at that point in time. All right. I'm Brett Johnson. I'm here to scare you to death today. It's only scary if you don't do anything about it. All right. That's the truth. It's only scary if you don't do anything about it. I'm Brett Johnson. What do we say? We say stay safe, stay secure. I've told you how to do both. Stay vigilant. Always be aware of your environment. Always take an objective view of your environment, of your situation. All three things. Stay safe, stay secure, stay vigilant. At the end of the day, this is the Brett Johnson Show. Just do the right damn thing. Thank you for watching. I'm Brett Johnson. Until next time.